Thank you to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. for sponsoring this video. Yuta Akotsu, the first protagonist of JJK, as well as the sorcerer that Gojo entrusted directly to watch over the rest of the students. He is someone who is incredibly strong, and while there's never been a doubt in my mind of the fact that Yuta was incredibly strong, there was always some doubts in my mind of whether Yuta really was the second strongest to Satoru Gojo in the modern era. Whether it was because the narrative tried to portray that Hikari and Yuta were rivals, and that Yuta himself believed that Hikari was above him, or Yuki's direct performance against Kenjaku and the fact that he could break his arms with just one punch, that there was always so many things that made me truly doubt whether Yuta was the second strongest of the modern era or not. Though I was always leaning closer to the opinion that Yuta was, I wasn't 100% certain on it until what happened in the most recent chapter. With Yuta's direct display against Sukuna, I now well and truly believe that Yuta is by far and away the strongest sorcerer of the modern era. Now that, well, Gojo's gone, but yeah. So with this video, I would like to do two things. One, basically put up why I was always on the fence a little bit of if Yuta was truly the strongest of the modern era or not, and the second thing I want to talk about is how this chapter has just certainly made Yuta the strongest of the modern era right next to Gojo, and how it really left no room for debate or discussion that Yuta is the second strongest modern sorcerer. Now up first, I'm going to talk about the contentions I've always had with Yuta scaling and putting Yuta at such a high position. Because for a while, a lot of people will know, Yuta got a really bad anti-feat that kinda shot his scaling right into the dirt for a little bit, which was the entire Sukuna being able to one-shot Ryu with a 100% dismantle at 15 fingers. And while a lot of us do agree, me included, that Yuta probably held back on using lethal techniques, especially considering we see how many techniques Yuta has copied with the most recent chapter, and I'm going to get into that later on into the video, it was always made pretty clear that Yuta and Ryu had relative stats in terms of defense, offense, and speed. With the way that Yuta won by directly outsmarting Ryu and basically making Ryu hit himself with his own attack after two of them had battled for quite a bit of time. Stack that with the fact that Sukuna basically blitzed Ryu or just moved too fast and activated his ability too fast for Ryu to even fire a counterattack, and it kinda really put a hole in a lot of Yuta's scaling. However, the time skip offered a lot for Yuta, with the time skip making it clear that all of the characters had directly gotten stronger, due to Sukuna's statement that all of them have leveled up their cursed energy, refinement, and cursed energy control. Now, yes, Yuta wasn't present with them, but if Kusakabe and Ino, two people who aren't exactly prodigies, are able to do it, then Yuta Akotsu, one of the most talented sorcerers, is certainly able to do it, and certainly able to upgrade his own reinforcement levels. Especially considering in the battle against Geto, Yuta repeatedly directly got stronger and stronger the more and more he fought against him. From being much slower to Geto, then being able to basically blitz Geto in terms of speed and land a hit on him if we go by the JJK Zero movie. Now, my other contention was the entire Yuta stating that Hikari was stronger than him on a roll. I always just interpreted that as the narrative trying to paint Hikari and Yuta as relative in terms of power towards each other, which was supported by both Kenjaku and Gojo's opinion, with Kenjaku saying that Sukuna would have to end up fighting the big three, i.e. Yuta, Hikari, and Maki after he was done defeating Gojo, and Gojo saying that Yuta and Hikari shouldn't jump into the fight unless Gojo ends up weaker than either of them. My final contention with putting Yuta as strong was the most recent feat against Kenjaku in specific, where Yuta was able to cut off Kenjaku's head. However, it was made pretty clear that Takapo was very crucial in order for that plan to succeed, and Yuta had to catch him heavily off guard and exhausted Kenjaku because of the fact that Takapo was directly wearing him down. So for a long while, I always thought that Yuta's scaling had some holes and some contentions in them. However, this most recent chapter, in my opinion, kinda answered the question of why Yuta is just considered second to Satoru Gojo, and showed off really how powerful Yuta Akotsu truly is. Which I'm going to go over the 3 feats that Yuta shows that really put into perspective of how powerful Yuta Akotsu actually is. With just base form Yuta and partially manifested Rika, because Rika is not fully manifested until Yuta actually shows up in the battle against Sukuna, they were able to deal with all of the cursed spirits that Kenjaku directly released, which were likely hundreds of cursed spirits from grade 3 all the way up to grade 1 and maybe even some special grade levels, all just casually and effortlessly dealt with by Yuta Akotsu. Furthermore, they were likely amped by Kenjaku as well. After all, we know that Kenjaku was directly able to amp cursed spirits with his own cursed energy, as Kenjaku had showed off directly in the Choso fight. Furthermore, the amount of time that it took for him to eliminate all those cursed spirits is the same amount of time that Kashimo fought Sukuna as well as Higuruma and the others fought against Sukuna for. In that short amount of time, they were able to deal with hundreds of cursed spirits, and then Yuta was still able to have a conversation with Kenjaku directly after. Of course, it wasn't that long of a conversation, but this should really put into perspective of how strong Yuta is. To be able to effortlessly deal with hundreds of cursed spirits all at once that fast with both him and partially manifested Rika. Now, Yuta does say partially manifested Rika's power was needed for it. However, it is still Rika and Yuta dealing with hundreds of them and not a single one of them escaping, with their presumed goal being to destroy more of Japan rather than to actually destroy Yuta himself and fight Yuta. And he did all of this without using any of his copied curse techniques. This was just off pure raw curse energy, refinement, and skill. He was able to deal with all of these cursed spirits, which is absolutely insane. Now, yes, Tengen was able to escape, but to be fair to him, he wasn't really expecting Tengen to just suddenly appear out of nowhere and for Kenjaku to be able to do this, because this is Kenjaku. Kenjaku does weird things. Now, before we talk about the power of love that Yuta shows off against his battle against Sukuna, I want to talk a little bit about our sponsor for the video. However, before we continue on with the video, I would like to do a brief break in order to talk about the sponsors of the page, Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Both Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. are a snack-based company based in Japan, based in sharing the experience of Japanese snacks, both traditional and modern, all around the world, with each month having its own particular theme. However, this month has a very, very special theme, with Tokyo Treat's theme being Be My Valentine. With love it being in the air, they've packed several of their favorite treats that can be shared with you and the person you love, or if you just want to eat them alone, then eat them alone. After all, with all the pain that Gege causes us Jujutsu Kaisen fans, we all know that we would love some nice comfort food to be able to help us, and this month's Tokyo Treat Box certainly fits the bill. With things like the Strawberry Shortcake Kit Kat, the Pokemon Candy Hearts, the Pirika Spicy Ramen, and so much more, Tokyo Treat comes with a lot of snacks. However, they all come in Japanese, which some of you guys might be like, okay, we can't read out Japanese. Fortunately, they end up giving you this booklet in order to be able to understand what each of the snacks are, as well as what goes into each of the snacks. So if you have any allergies, then you will be completely fine because you'll be able to understand which ones you can and cannot eat. So what I want to show off in particular is my favorite of them all, the baked chocolate, which I'm going to be honest, when I looked at it at first, I thought it was genuinely going to melt in my hand, but it didn't. However, it still had this nice, good, genuine chocolate feel to it, unlike some fake candies out there, and it tasted really good, and I'm going to try one of them on screen now. And now we're going to try one of them, my particular favorite, the baked chocolate. So let's try it. And it's so hard to describe, but it tastes really, really good to it. It doesn't have a melty texture at all to it. You can taste chocolate to it. It's genuinely something I would recommend. This is one of the treats I would recommend, but it has so much more that I can't even begin to get into. However, is modern snacks not your thing? Well, let's move on to the other box, the Sakura Co. box, known as Valentine's Indulgence. After all, Valentine is not just about sweets, but it's about celebrating shared connections between people. And what better way to do it than through traditions and these traditional like snacks, such as the peach teriyaki, the chocolate Danish, and the mini heart are. All of them pair so well with the cocoa sriracha tea, which I'm actually going to make this tea on screen for all of y'all because I really love making their teas because their teas taste amazing. So let's actually get into the tea making process. However, not just do they come with tea themselves, they also come with a tableware item, which the tableware item of this buff is the Kaiko plate, otherwise known as the Firefly plate, which as you can clearly see, these two just really, really go well together because what better way to show off love is there than a flame? An eternal flame, dare I even say. However, that's Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Thank you again for sponsoring the channel. And remember, use code ETERNAL10 in the description below on the website in order to get $5 off on your first order. And I hope y'all enjoy your snacks and have a great Valentine's. Anyways, back to you, future me. Now, in the battle against Sukuna, Yuta shows off quite a lot of feats. With one of the more impressive feats that's probably going to be underlooked is the fact that Sukuna directly covered himself with small blades like chainsaws to hold the katana without touching it, which means Yuta's katana is dangerous enough to the point where Sukuna doesn't just trust cursed energy reinforcement to be enough to hold that katana, which really puts into perspective of how powerful Yuta's katana is and how much Sukuna is actually taking him seriously. Because if he just thought it would be enough for him to use cursed energy refinement, he would have only used cursed energy refinement to hold off the katana. Now, it could also be possible that Sukuna is being wary because this might be a cursed tool and he doesn't know what it would do, but either way, it shows the level of respect that Sukuna does treat Yuta with to have to use this application of cleave rather than just using his cursed energy reinforcement alone like he has been using against the others so far. And then in the fight, Rika and Yuta both begin to bombard Sukuna with hits. And of course, while Sukuna is kinda easily dealing with partially manifested Rika, this isn't even full power Rika yet, by the way, and I feel that should be established, Yuta is able to land a punch on Sukuna's stomach mouth. Now, while Sukuna isn't too affected, Yuta is still able to land a hit nonetheless, and in a 2v1 he's able to cause enough pressure to the point where he can land a hit on Sukuna, which is insanely impressive. Furthermore, he also shows off the ability to dodge dismantle to a degree. Now, he is shown to get cut by it, but that's even more impressive because he has enough cursed energy and reinforcement to survive getting cut by it. Even though he does take damage from it, he has shown off the ability to dodge it to certain extents, which currently only a few characters have pulled off reacting to dismantle, those characters being Gojo, Kashimo, and Yuji themselves. Oh, and Kusakabe, which are the only 3 characters that have currently pulled off reacting to dismantle, and now Yuta has been added to that list. Which, to put into perspective, we have Gojo, the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, Kashimo, the strongest sorcerer of his era, Kusakabe, the guy who was able to react to Uzumaki, and Yuji Itadori, someone who was able to keep up relative to Maki, and that was before his post-time skip buff. But now we're going to get into the real potent part of Yuta's power, which is his domain, the power of love. True love is what the domain is called that Yuta and Sukuna are standing on. A domain so powerful that it is forcing Sukuna to use Hollow Wicker Basket in order to counter the sure hit of the domain, which is forcing him to not have access to his extra mouth and his 2 extra hands. The thing that Kashimo directly said made him perfect because of the fact he could chant with the extra mouth and continue casting hand signs with his 2 extra hands. But on top of the sure hit basically being any of the copy techniques that he wants it to be to hit the opponent, he is also able to pick up one of the swords, one of the many swords, and he used the copy technique that is infused into that sword, because each of these swords is a copied technique. And to put it into perspective, the panel that I'm putting on screen, I counted how many swords there were in this panel, and this, by the way, is the second most amount of swords, not the most amounts, because the biggest one I'm also going to put on screen, but the second most amount of swords have a total of 51 inside of that domain panel, which means Yuta could have copied upwards 51 techniques, if not an even greater amount. That is how many curse techniques Yuta has access to that he could potentially swap between. And this amount of swords, these amount of curse techniques is what truly convinced me that Yuta is most certainly the second strongest sorcerer of the modern era, right behind Gojo. Because this man has access to over 50 curse techniques. Now, for a long while, I and a lot of people did believe Yuta had access to more curse techniques. I don't think anyone thought that Yuta had access to over 50 in total. Now, do we know what these curse techniques do? No, not at all. But having access to over 50 curse techniques, considering we know how varying curse techniques can actually be, is absolutely terrifying. Now, are we going to see all of them in action? I highly doubt it, but we're certainly going to see some of the much more potent, powerful ones in action. And if you have that many curse techniques copied, I doubt they are all just trash curse techniques, especially considering the move he considers to use is Fin Icebreaker, a move that negates durability, basically. And when it was used directly on Sukuna, it's shown that it actually did damage to him and made him have some blood on his face, which is insanely impressive. Because this is Sukuna we're talking about. Durability, negation, or not, the fact they're able to land this hit and still do some damage, and it still take a bit of time for Sukuna to heal. Now, yes, his RCT is still weakened, but we do see Sukuna is able to heal things like his hand coming back still relatively pretty fast. That's why I now believe that Yuta is by far and away the second strongest sorcerer of the modern era after this chapter. With his feces directly shows it off against Sukuna, whether in speed or power, easily putting him up there with some of the highest levels of people, already more than he already was, as well as the fact he's given one of the most broken domain expansions in the verse. Yeah, this chapter's convinced me. You Yuta fans were right. Also, I just want to say, I was glad I made my video about Yuta and why Yuta is going to break all expectations, because I'm going to say this now, he shattered mine as well. However, that's just my opinion on how Yuta has shown off he is by far and away one of the strongest sorcerers of the modern era. I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below, because I think Yuta is just going to get more and more impressive the more and more we see the curse endings he has access to in the next chapter. So I'm super hyped about this. I'm going to see y'all later. Peace out. Hope y'all have a good day. Bye.